Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Amanda Natividad.
And welcome to our new podcast where we discuss viral moments and what lessons you can take from them for your marketing strategies. I'll start first. So a lot of you might have seen Rory McIlroy and the Masters and how he finally won after 10 years, a dream he'd been chasing since 2011, where he almost got it and then failed at the last moment. He's only the sixth player in history to achieve the career Grand Slam. He's widely considered one of the most talented golfers. And his win took over social media. And I want to go into why I think that is and what sorts of lessons you can take from this for your marketing strategies.
Love it. So I don't keep up with golf too much, but I was seeing it in my feed. And I just know, you know how when something goes viral, at some point you feel like you're just learning by osmosis. That's kind of how I'm feeling, where I'm getting the sense that people are really rooting for this guy. People were really excited that he won. We have a new, really big star in golf. So tell me more about that.
So he's technically not a new star.
See, news to me by osmosis.
Yeah. So he's been around since he was a child. He was lauded to be the next Tiger Woods. Yeah, no. And that's, I'll add that context because that's one of the tweets that also went viral is the Nike ad that he'd done a while back. So I'll also go into how, companies can piggyback off, viral moments in the right way, not just kind of trend jacking as we've seen some other companies do that kind of fail. But yeah, that was what was great about it. It's been 10 years and this was his white whale. So I think that was part of why people got so invested in it. He got close last year as well. There's another thing. I don't know how many of you are following Full Swing on Netflix. That's kind of how I got into it. Was I started watching Full Swing because I had also watched Drive to Survive. And that's a key thing here, where the idea of storytelling and really getting people to engage with the players and the sport and speaking to the individual stories of what people are going through as they're trying to achieve these goals. And people love an underdog. Yes, not that he's an underdog, but he was an underdog in the context of achieving this career Grand Slam, which he'd been chasing for 10 years. So people were invested in that. People know him, have been following along and wanting him to win. So it was just all these things that met in the moment for it to kind of take over social media as well. So I'm glad to hear that you saw it also on your feed.
Yeah, and it seems like by all accounts he's a good guy, which I'm imagining why that's also such a big story, right? Because tapping into marketing and storytelling, we all love a good story. We all love having a hero to root for.
Mm-hmm.
And we all obviously relate, right, to that big, lofty goal, failing a couple of times, but getting up and trying again. I mean, it's the classic story that it never gets old, right? We always want a new version of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about something that you mentioned earlier on the notion of trend jacking and how, we all know there's a right way and a wrong way to jump on trends. So let's talk about that a little more.
Yeah. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about was how Nike, it seemed as if they already had the ad ready to go, right? They had the video that they put out of Rory's Masters jacket coming out of the dry cleaning. And what I really liked about that and what I think really resonated with people was the fact that it wasn't even about Nike. They hardly were even mentioned, except, obviously their logo at the end. But the point is that they made it about Rory and they made it about his achievement and what he had done, made it a tribute to him and everything he'd been through, instead of trying to turn it around and make it oh, he was wearing Nike shoes or whatever. Nobody wants that, right?
Yeah.
This is a great moment that he had, and we all got to celebrate that with him. And that was also, there was also the other video of the ad they had done earlier, that was kind of putting him in lockstep with Tiger Woods, which obviously is a whole other thing. But it showed that he admired Tiger Woods, one of the only other people that had achieved the career Grand Slam. So it also showed you that he had a dream and a purpose and something else he wanted to achieve that also made us be able to root for him in that way. So I think that was what made it compelling. Obviously, we've also seen when other people jump in on trends and don't do it the right way because they're turning it back on themselves, or they say something bad. One of the things I saw was some of the negative press that one of the other players got Bryson, he came out and said, oh, like, you know, Rory didn't talk to me the whole day. Like, why are you making this about yourself? Like, why are you even bringing up this thing? Like, and then somebody else brought up another video showing that he talked to him like at the end. So it just made him look bad in a way that like was unnecessary. Like,
Yeah,
you know, it's like, why would you say anything that isn't congratulatory?
totally.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's one of those things that like, you know, you never want to put your brand in like a negative context when there's something like
totally.
nice going on at the
Totally.
time.
And like another great takeaway is like great marketing is you don't make it about you. Like you don't make it about your brand, you don't make it about your product, you make it about someone else. I mean,
Right.
usually it's you make it about your customer.
Hmm.
And in this case, it's like Rory is the customer,
Hmm.
right? And he's our hero, right?
Right.
So where that ad works so well is that like to your point, it wasn't about Nike. It wasn't about look how cool Nike products are. It
Hmm.
was let's all share and celebrate this moment together and look at what like kind of like look at this accomplishment, right? Like look at the power of sports, the power of hard work, the power of grit, and it's easy to get behind that. So I think a good takeaway for brands is if you're going to try to tap into a moment like kind of a big moment like this, I think it's more of what can you do that is like directly in line with your brand, right? Your mission, your values, but is also not making that moment about you.
Yeah, definitely. I think these days people want more authenticity and to feel like they know something about the brand, and not necessarily that they want to relate to you, but like they want to be associated with you. So a lot of companies can like look to that and see, you know, other moments that are happening, right? That would be one of the takeaways from here is that yes, storytelling is a good way to get your brand out there. But another thing is like we all know that there are upcoming moments that are going to come up and that are going to have the potential to go viral, like the Masters, right? Everyone knows the Masters is every year, right? But I can tell you that this is like one of the most highly watched Masters because of the story, because of what was happening, right? You already have people like looking forward to the Full Swing episode on Netflix because it's going to show this in a whole new way with the people there. You're going to get to talk to Rory, you're going to get to talk to other golf players and like the people that like witnessed it, you know, firsthand. But, you know, in this context, like Nike had to have that video like ready to go. You know, Rory had been playing well pretty much the whole weekend. So they were just waiting for Sunday for him to win, but they already had like the video ready to go. So you might not be able to pull together a video last minute at that high a quality, but you can certainly put together a few like, you know, social posts that can get you in front of the people that you want to get in front of, right? So that's something that like you should think about, like what are events that are coming up or what are like moments that are coming up that we can kind of try to piggyback on and then create content for that ahead of time so that you have it ready to go in case it goes the way you want, and then maybe some other content that, you know, in case it didn't go right. Like if he hadn't won, I'm sure there would have been some other Nike ad that would have like gone out at the time.
Right on. All right. So the next thing we have on our list is brand recognition. And this, the luxury brands going viral on TikTok, right? So amid the tariff news, a bunch of Chinese TikTok creators have been spilling the tea, so to speak, on the notion that luxury brands like Hermes and Louis Vuitton outsource most of their manufacturing to China. So this is causing a bunch of American consumers calling for connects or hookups to these Chinese manufacturers. Like I'm seeing so many posts about people saying like, wait, drop the link, or
Yeah.
other people saying there's no link to drop. You have to get in touch with these manufacturers. But put another way, I think this story can be best summarized as, so a viral TikTok from the account SendBags2 claimed that 80% of luxury bags are made in China. However, this TikTok has since been deleted. Why? Because the thing is, it's actually not true.
Wait, what? So, okay, obviously there's a bunch of content that goes viral all the time. That's
Yeah.
not true. But yeah, to say that it's not true at all is kind of wild.
Yeah. So in the case of Hermes, right, Hermes has officially stated everything is made in France, right? There are even all kinds of videos, right? I saw one video by Vogue where they interviewed a creative director at Hermes, and they showed like the process of making like a what is it, like a Kelly bag and a Birkin bag. Everything's made in France, and I believe like some of their artisans they train for like 5+ years before they really get to manufacture these bags. Louis Vuitton products are made in France, Spain, Italy, and the United States. That's it. That being said, Burberry and Prada have said that parts of their manufacturing are done in China. So, and I think Prada has said like some of their less intricate items. For Burberry, it's kind of their less pricey, ready to wear items. It seems like these brands have been pretty honest about this. I mean, look, I don't know every single detail about how like the French artisans are trained, right? But these are their official statements. Like Hermes, Louis Vuitton, are like, we don't make our stuff in China. What I think is really interesting about this story is just the overall distrust, the focus on status that people have, right? And how there's this kind of perfect storm of it's so easy to believe certain things, right? Like it's really easy to play into the narrative or to kind of construct the narrative that you want to believe, right? I think marketers need to figure out the universal truth in your audience. What is the universal truth that your audience believes? And then figure out how to tap into it. So I think here, the truths are a lot of things are made in China, right? A lot of premium products are made in China, like Lululemon, right? Like, I mean, Lululemon, I think, has manufacturing plants like Thailand, Vietnam, and stuff, but like also China. Lululemon, of course, right? It's not Hermes, but it's also not a cheap brand. It's a premium brand. A lot of them are made in China. And the other truth is a lot of luxury goods, or all the luxury goods are really expensive, and the average consumer doesn't know why. Like, really, why does a Birkin bag start at $10,000, right? Like, why does it cost that much, right? So in essence, it's really easy to believe that a lot of these luxury goods are made in China because things are made in China. I think a
Yeah.
big takeaway for marketers is, learn from the universal truths and how can you tap into it? How can you expose a pain point, solve a pain point, something there.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I think a couple things from what you said is that there's two different sets of products, right? There's the high luxury, which is those are the ones that are made in France and the United States and countries where it costs more. And then there's the ones that are ready to wear and that cost a little bit cheaper, though they're still luxury, right? And they're made in China, say. But that doesn't mean that it is inherently less luxurious or that it takes less to make in terms of like hours and resources. It's just that the pay structure is probably different in China than it is in France. So that kind of goes into it. But then on top of that, even with the added work that gets done in places like France, the United States, that doesn't mean that the product itself is now $10,000, right?
Right.
It's still $1,000 to $2,000 worth of labor overall. It's just that added markup of the brand being Hermes or Louis Vuitton is what makes the bag end up costing tens to like hundreds of thousands. I've heard of the crocodile leather Hermes bags, right? So I think there's two different things there that people often confuse, and that then makes it confusing for the consumer, because how am I as a consumer supposed to know all this unless I'm going to go do all my research and like find out what to do or like how to purchase what I want to purchase based on the name. So definitely I think that's one of the things that you want to be able to do is if you are having a more of a luxury product or service, being able to back that up with like why it costs this much.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things it does remind me of is that, that story of, Picasso, where someone comes up to him and they ask him for a drawing and, it takes him 2 minutes and he says, oh, it's like $200, and like $200 took you like 2 seconds to do. And it's like, you're not paying me for the artwork. You're paying me for all the knowledge that I've brought into this, of like my years of like doing it. So if you think about it that way in terms of the luxury items that you're buying, it's like you're paying for the name brand and for what it says about you, right? Because there's a certain thing that it says about the people that do buy the Hermes bags or Louis Vuitton bags, and that's also what you're paying for. But that's hard to like put a money.
Yeah, it is. And I that's a great analogy, the Picasso analogy. I mean, it also applies to a lot of things, right? It applies to like how freelancers, consultants should can think about pricing their services,
Yeah.
right? Like,
That's what I was thinking
you're
too.
not really, right? You're not doing like price per word.
Right.
You don't sell your consulting services like on a per email basis, right?
Mm.
Like, that's not, or
God,
someone's not paying
imagine.
you to write emails to them, right? They're paying you for the strategy. And then like part and parcel of that is some emails that you have to send.
Yeah, definitely.
I also want to say another takeaway I have from this is for the consumers. So I'm going to say for consumers, if you're going to vote with your dollars, so to speak, like if that's a stance you want to take, I'm going to say be informed, right? If you want to stand for something and like you don't have to, right? Like it's say like, look, if someone wants to buy themselves a Birkin bag, like have at it. I mean, it has no effect on my life, right? Like do your thing. That's what you want. Great. Good for you. But what I would say is if you're going to stand for something or choose to do something that, it probably best to either be informed if you want to be informed or just own it, maybe. I'll just say, I just think you can't
Say it.
complain about like Shein and Temu and other fast fashion brands being terrible for the environment, but then also try to be like, oh, I want to find my Chinese hookup to get my luxury purse for cheap. You can't really have it both ways. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't know.
definitely.
In the end, you do you.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say is having seen not just that TikTok, but a lot of the TikToks that came out, I think we do kind of have to start moving away from the idea that because it's made in China, it's inherently cheap,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I did actually find very informative some of those TikToks where they're showing the artisans actually hand sewing some of that stuff. And maybe some of it is propaganda, fine, but
Sure.
it's also people are doing that, right? There are
Yeah.
some luxury items that do get a bit more of like handwork that gets done versus like machines. And then that doesn't necessarily mean that one or the other is cheap versus expensive, you know? So I do hope that we kind of start, moving away from that and not just thinking that because something is made in France or something is made in the United States, that it's necessarily more expensive or luxe than something that's made in Mexico or China or Vietnam. So we'll see.
Yeah. That's a great point to end on. I love that.
Awesome. So I want to go into my final thing, which is thought leadership. I kind of cringe at calling it that because it seems so much different than what this video actually seemed like to me when I saw it. And that's the Ryan Coogler breaking down Kodak formats. You probably saw the video. Kodak published it, and it's basically a 10-minute video of Ryan Coogler just breaking down the video formats and sound qualities for a movie theater experience, what the difference between 36 millimeter is, how you have an IMAX experience. And so he goes into like details, breaking down the technical aspects of this and making it very accessible for people. He also said how like the sound design impacts the viewer experience and why he made certain choices. He also said it was the first time that he had worked with two different formats being filmed at the same time in order for both those audiences to be able to experience it as best as possible. Usually what happens from my understanding is that you film it in one format and then convert that format into the other ones. So you're going to miss something in the viewing experience because it's not filmed in that specific format. And that's all like very technical, but I thought it was like very cool because it's like, oh wow, like you're actually explaining to me why this like matters and what it makes different when you go to the movie theaters. And I thought it was like really cool because he was, explaining it and like really getting technical, but still making it easy to like, break down and like talk to me about like what it means that like you do this thing versus this other thing. And I think one of the things I also found like interesting that I saw a tweet on Twitter say was that like there wasn't code switching, like he just kept like his normal like voice and accent while explaining it. So I thought that was a cool way to like really bring in that new audience that maybe doesn't like think about this ever.
Yeah.
But like would listen to him talking about it. And one thing I learned is he had also done this for Black Panther and for Creed and like, really talked to like the technical aspects of his own like filmmaking. And I thought that was like really cool because one of the things that I'm constantly telling clients is that you should be, putting your thoughts out there, put your thought leadership out there. And to some extent, I feel like that terminology has been just completely ruined because of like what thought leadership counts as nowadays on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Everything Kodak formats taught me about B2B sales.
Yes, exactly, right? But originally what this was meant to denote is that like I was explaining as an expert in my field how something could apply to you in an authentic and accessible, interesting way. And if we could just go back to that, having people that are super knowledgeable about their experience and what the things that they know about, you can use that to build credibility and trust for your brand and for your product or service. So it gets people to appreciate the why behind things. Like, why did we decide to build the product this way? Why did we decide to build, this feature? People like to know that, especially if like the type of person that you're selling to wants to know that stuff, right? Like the best way to attract your audience or like a potential lead or, customer is by talking to them about the things that they wanted to hear from you and explain it to them without dumbing it down. Just explain it clearly and simply and creating that sort of content for them in some way.
Yeah. And I really love what you said about Ryan Coogler not code switching. I really mean this, but it's still going to sound like a really obnoxious marketer thing to say, which is that is really the core of thought leadership, right? Just being that authentic, right?
Yes.
It's just be yourself, show up in the way that you are, come as you are, share your knowledge and in your way, right? I think that the ideal kind of thought leadership, right, isn't about like, how can I be the best one? Or how can I do this the definitive right way? It's really just harnessing who you are authentically and showing up.
Yeah, I like that. I think we lose a lot in trying to copy other people on the way that they do things, like the exact way that they do things. I think part of what I want to do in this podcast is to have people take lessons and then use it for themselves, like change it in a way that makes sense for their company. You're not going to be able to follow all of these marketing strategies, right? Not every strategy is going to work for you, but what is it that you can take from these moments of like what people are talking about in order to convert those marketing strategies for yourself and for your company, right? And that's why I want to, really point out like this is what storytelling is. This is what, thought leadership is, or, what brand recognition is, in order for you to learn the different examples of what works on a large scale in order to kind of filter it down to what will work for your scale.
Yeah, love it.
Well, we'll be here every week, kind of breaking down other viral moments and explaining how the marketing works behind it. Thanks for listening to our first episode. You can follow me at Sonia Bechez on Twitter and LinkedIn, or go to my website, bengrowth.co.
And you can follow me at Amanda Nat, also on Twitter and LinkedIn. You can also find my personal site, amandanat.com, where you can subscribe to my newsletter. But most importantly, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, because we're going to be here every week, friends.
Bye.